Hello, friends. This is Rekha Karup, and continuing the conversation on trauma, understanding trauma through the autonomous nervous system. So, just I thought this is evening time. I just put on some music and just was doing some doodling, just calming down my system, and tuning in, slowing down, cooling down. And I thought this was a beautiful environment to talk about the parasympathetic nervous system. So before I speak, just a little recap so it feels a continuation from the yesterday's video. So the entire nervous system of our body consists of these two parts. That's where I started. The central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, which is this entire network of nerves which connect the brain and the spinal cord to rest of all the organs and all the other systems and maintain the function of all the other systems. The peripheral nervous system consists of the sensory system, sensory complex, and the motor complex. And we're going down the motor complex for the autonomous nervous system. The motor complex consists of the somatic system and the autonomous nervous system. So the somatic system is the voluntary system. The movements that we can make with the involvement of thought, or which we can consciously enter into: walking, drinking, eat. Look, those things that we as humans have this connection, right? That is a somatic system. And then you have the involuntary system, which is the autonomic nervous system, which actually takes care of this entire body in so many ways. Thank God that we do not have to consciously be responsible for the inner workings of all these systems in a body. So the autonomic nervous system has its nerves, its signals, its network connected to every other organ, our skin, everything is connected, and it is without us even knowing it is doing all these actions and responses and inputs, and there's a lot of communication that we do not even know is happening through the autonomous nervous system. And the autonomous nervous system consists of two prime branches: the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And together, when they work together, so both these systems have their nerve endings in all our organs, so they both function. So one is about increasing and the other is about decreasing. So they both work together. So when they work together, then there is harmony in the body. And both these systems are essential for our function. So the key function of the sympathetic nervous system, as I spoke yesterday, is the fight-flight response. Yeah. So it is what increases our heart rate. So even for me to be able to be excited about something, to get into action, to defend myself, to speak, raise my, so all those moments when you feel your heart rate is increasing, you're excited, your eyes open up, you're like really tuned in, and something completely holds you, in that sense of mobilization, then the sympathetic system is really activated. When you're exercising, also the sympathetic nervous system is activated. And then is the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is mainly the rest and digest, or feed and breed. So both these activities, are connected with the parasympathetic nervous system. And tomorrow day after I'll make a video on the polyvagal system, and you will see how it is the vagus nerve. Even our ability to connect is actually part of the parasympathetic nervous system. Yeah. So just to give a brief again, just as a reminder of the sympathetic nervous system, so the sympathetic nervous system is mainly connected to the in our spine. It is, if I look at it, it is part of the lumbar, the thoracic and the lumbar part of our spine, the T1 and L, T1, L2, and the parasympathetic nervous system is connected with our brain stem and the final, the S. It is the, which one is that? It is the sacral region of the spinal cord. So those two are part of the parasympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is very much connected with the limbic system, which is a mammalian, system. And from the amphibian and reptilian brain, which is part of our brain stem, which is the medulla oblongata. At the very beginning, when you are born, and as from that very egg zygote to becoming a baby, first 9 months, it's a brain stem, and that's part of the parasympathetic nervous system. And then develops the limbic system, which is actually connected to a sympathetic nervous system. So the limbic system, which is the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, all those, I'll speak about it when I talk about the brain in another video. The sympathetic nervous system in the mammalian body, all the mammals in the process of evolution, it allowed them to fight and flee, So that was the purpose of the sympathetic nervous system. Like if you love watching National Geographic and, the David Attenborough's voice series from my childhood, I remember going to theaters and the newsreel first would be, and you could hear David Attenborough's voice. As my even as teenager, it was very much present. Those series, where it'd be these African landscape and the jungles, the Serengeti area, the Kenya. That's kind of the wild, where you would have all these deers or deer-looking. Those, I forgot the name. Gazelles, that's what Peter Levine gives examples of gazelle. The gazelles are grazing, very calmly, in their homeostasis. You can see they are, grazing. And then the predators, which could be the lions or the leopards, they are predating, coming. And then you can see how the gazelles, this predator's movement. So I'm sure the lion themselves are preparing in their attack. So there is this thing. And for the gazelle, the system, how they just get focused from being this relaxed homeostasis state. Suddenly, you could see everybody's ears go up, their eyes are open, focused, and in this entire herd gets into this movement of fight or flee. And most of the time flee, because they can't fight. So what they have to do is flee. And in that's how the mammalian system. And in the, or even there is fight also, you can see that system, if you see in the lions, there are these, or even in these big mammalian animals fighting with each other. This whole heart rate increasing, it was, so this is how the sympathetic nervous system has evolved. Fight and flee, marking boundaries. Animals, they're very clear about their boundaries, and they would fight if someone enters or crisscrosses their boundaries. They feel any kind of threat. So the system was so tuned into that, and that is also its purpose in our body, in the human body. But we are no longer living in wild. We are living in concrete jungle. Right? So our threats are very different. Some of our threats are man-made. There are man-made, there is the predatory effect, and then there is also the inspirational aspect of the human existence, yeah, because of our the cortical, the neocortex part of our brain and meaning making and all that. We also have, we take on these things, take on these, so we create our own challenges. We have the capability, right? And even in that challenges, as we meet it, move towards it, also the sympathetic system takes over. But the thing with the sympathetic system is that as it increases, as the sympathetic system comes online, even in the wild, when you see, there is a release of adrenaline and cortisol, especially in the human nervous system. There's this rush, which is what makes us do things, quick, getting, those kind of movements. And but when that is over, the sympathetic nervous system's work is over, we will feel this immediate down, and we have to make room for it. When your sympathetic nervous system is online and when you come off it, you have to make space for the parasympathetic nervous system to come in and do the cleanup, do the regulation, do the digestion of what just happened, to allow rest and slowing down. But in the world that we live in, we are so tuned into the sympathetic nervous system, even as a child. To wake up a child and get a child prepared for school, it is on the sympathetic nervous system, not on a homeostasis that we send a child to school, because it's not a natural thing for a child. Learning is natural, but in the way of going to school in this completely new environment, new people every day. I mean, even if you know them, again, going into a group of people, like it's a routine. That has an effect on our nervous system. We use a sympathetic nervous system. And somewhere, the way our school systems are designed, the way our work systems are designed, there is no room for the parasympathetic nervous system to actually also move along with it to balance this fight, flight, and all the rush that we experience. How do we also slow down? Yeah, that is not built in. So many of us, like even now, to move in homeostasis is something that I'm learning. I actually first experienced is when I started meditating and doing breathing, that, oh my God, there is this state. I knew it as a child, to the state, but I often in my life, when I knew this state, it was of not much value in the world around me. You are seen, if you're, especially in my country where I come from, in India, you're especially seen if you're if you're riding the sympathetic nervous system. And I always felt that you could be a leader or a class monitor if you had this, this fight and this attitude, and then, you can speak loudly and I had to develop that, and it was not something that it was always a hit on my nervous system because there was not enough time to bounce back and find homeostasis. So that is something that stays with me. So I have to really find ways now, to tune back, to not ride the sympathetic nervous system. And what does this mean? That I take enough breath as I speak, so I can balance both. I'm aware of my inhalation and my exhalation. Yeah. So that's as something. So the purpose of the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. So it's not a system that we have to ride all the time, as in the world we have to do. Yeah. And so that's not how, if you see in nature, it's ridden for a brief moment. You will see animals, like this chase of the lion and the chasing the gazelle or the predator on the prey attacking, and whatever they move through, they may even go into the freeze mode, and then, and then sometimes it escapes, it flees, then it shakes, and the lion also leaves the chase. If it doesn't get it, it's not like, okay, there's no ego there. So they can just let it go, and the lion goes back into its rest. Yeah. And then the gazelle is back. The whole herd of gazelle is back in their homeostasis grazing. They switch, then they are back. So there is an inbuilt ability in our nervous system to be free of trauma. But it requires that window But we, in our world that we live in, there is no window for that. We live in a world where parasympathetic nervous system has no room. Yeah, people come home and yet we do not know. We come home, we turn on the television, and we are watching television. And many things that you watch in the television is again getting you on this fight flight mode, because you look at most of our television programs, it's all about fight and flee. Yeah, it is. Those are the most popular shows. So it keeps us in our sympathetic nervous system. This is something that I'm sharing. I mean, I've not heard others, but this is my own attunement as I am attuning to my own body. I'm realizing the amount of riding that I do on the sympathetic nervous system, and in my life, I am making a conscious effort to not do that, to pause, to slow down, yeah, and to ride the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system, as we will, when I talk about the vagus nerve, you will see that is also what is responsible for experiencing safety and connection. I mean, I find that mind blowing. This slow down rest system is what enables the neocortex to come online and have this experience of presence, connection, yeah, intimacy, and even all the other regulations of activities of digestion, excretion, reproduction, yeah, procreation, orgasm, yeah, erection. All these are also part of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the one that brings our heart. So every organ, has both these points. One, sympathetic nervous system activates it, and the parasympathetic nervous system brings it down. So when they work together, like the accelerator and the brake, they keep the organ in homeostasis. So we feel calm and centered. So the parasympathetic nervous system is what, so even if during the day you are moving and working, when we come home in the evening, we really have to make room to get our parasympathetic connection. Yeah, not the freeze response of the parasympathetic, because parasympathetic nervous system is what? Yeah. See, there's danger. Yeah. A threat. You feel unsafe. Threat. Yeah. It could be in your workspace. It could be home. Something feels overwhelming. There's a stress in the nervous system. Yeah. So stress. So sympathetic nervous system responds to stress. That's the first system that comes online whenever there is stress or threat or unsafety. So our first response is to fight. Yeah, to say no, I don't want it. To say no, to fight, to be involved that way. Yeah, to our anger comes up. To raise our voice, to be angry, to say what we need to say, to be able to do that. Yeah. And if we are not able to do that, we feel like, oh my God, you say that and still there's no response. This is the threat or the unsafety keeps increasing, then your body would want to flee. Yeah, it would want to find ways to escape that situation. So it's already, you might not even, this is not something you can plan. When you plan it, already you have enough parasympathetic system of your, but this is what I'm saying is this is not planning. You cannot plan. So this would happen all in a moment. You get angry, your body would, before your mind can even cognize that this is a danger I cannot fight, you would already find yourself mobilizing and escaping that situation. And this happens so fast, and if both don't work, there is no way. So you're sitting in a meeting, yeah, and this thing is getting targeted either by a boss, by the person you report to, or your peers, and you know that you can neither fight, you cannot flee. What do? And sometimes what happens is there might be this response of the body where it just shuts, it just tries to conserve energy, protect you. So to freeze, yeah, or some might just have a collapse also. And these are all body's mechanism when it goes overwhelming, when you no longer have access to your brain. It goes down. So the parasympathetic can also take you up when you're really calm and composed, but many times it doesn't. When the fight doesn't work, flee doesn't work, we freeze. So you might be there, but you no longer have the ability to respond, to say your piece. So you may look to the other as someone, who's disinterested, dissociated, doesn't care. It can come across like that. So I'm giving you both the views. But the parasympathetic nervous system really also, in extreme situations of danger, especially for a child, it completely conserves all the energy and it gets directed to just freezing and surviving. So it is connected to the brainstem, our the oldest part of our brain, reptilian brain, where we lose cognition, we can no longer speak. Yeah, it is that part of the reptilian brain where so many things are no longer available. Mobility is not available. And many times children, even in abusive situations, they go there. That becomes, a way of survival. And then even as an adult. So you can go there, you survive, the minute you survive and you come out, if you have someone, I can say, as someone who has experienced sexual abuse in her life, I can tell you how the freeze response kicks in. It is absolutely unbelievable. And so, telling, oh, why didn't you say? Why couldn't you say? Even not just as a child, even as a woman, because that experience of a child itself, so my ability to fight and flee did not happen. And there was nobody I could talk about it. So already that system in my home or environment was compromised. That I knew that if I speak, I didn't know how I would be taken, whether I would be received and acknowledged and seen and loved the same way if I share something like that. And for many children, that's a thing, because many of our worthiness and our gets integrated into certain actions. If I do this or if I show up like this, only then my parents love me. This narrative gets set very early on, and sadly, it's such a blanketed experience in most homes, especially in India, certain way. And a child does everything to get the parents' love. It will mold itself fully to survive because it needs that. So it will become what the parents want it to become. Yeah. And so the parents have to be responsible for not allowing the child to do that. Yeah. And so what happens is, once if you are unable to fight, if your sympathetic system, you couldn't use it at certain time, and no one supported you to come back and bring it back online. Like you couldn't speak about it. If you speak to somebody, you cry and they pat you and they say, it's okay for you to fight, Something in our body the mobility finds its way back, in small steps. If you have someone empathetic, loving, who sees you in that. But if you don't have that, then for many times the trauma, your availability to go into the sympathetic system, it becomes unavailable to you. So your ability to fight or mark boundaries, have clear boundaries, that gets compromised. You might just drop into a freeze. You might even not know of the sympathetic system. Any threat, that's what trauma does. It breaks that cycle and you might just freeze. Or for someone, it might just be that they are stuck on the sympathetic system. Yeah. So these two systems, understanding these two systems and consciously allowing ourselves to rest. So for me now, even after a phone call where I'm very excited, as I keep the phone call to immediately switch into something else, I really have to give myself time First of all, when I'm on a call, I have to really watch out that I am not riding on the sympathetic system. And if I'm aware of it. And it's a journey, because when you're riding it, you're really not aware. It's only when you become present, my God, everything is like overexcited. So then I allow myself, so I allow this movement of both these systems. And the sympathetic system is where the emotions also are because it's a limbic brain, it's our emotional brain, and so all the emotions are like overwhelming, and really allowing these emotions to be held and experienced, not pressed down, not repressed, not bypassed or hidden from, but to really allowing oneself also to experience it and to express it, engage with it. Because when you go by the time, and the fear, all these anxiety, those are all the sympathetic. And by the time you go to the parasympathetic nervous system, you have lost connection to the emotions. So, so it's a reptilian. So there is no emotions. The emotion waves have already, you do not have access to feelings. Yeah. There's a numbness. There's a very deep numbness, freezeness, disassociation so you cannot move into connection. Your ability to connect is deeply compromised. So to come back, you have to ride the wave in steps. So you come to the sympathetic, so you learn about boundaries, you learn your ability to fight, you learn your ability to, it's okay for me, how do I do that? So you learn that step, and then you move into connection, the frontal cortex. Yeah. And so this movement of, so really I invite you to start paying attention. And many times it will always be after you've ridden it that you'll pay attention. Oh my God, I was so overwhelmed. And it's okay. Yeah, sometimes the systems come online to protect us. Yeah. So what does trauma do? Sympathetic and parasympathetic responses are there to protect us, to help us survive from a threat. But when there is trauma in our nervous system, because we couldn't complete a movement, that there are stimuli happened, we couldn't complete it, we couldn't fight, we couldn't flee, and we froze, and we did not know how to come out. So it stays in our nervous system. And then we act from there. We don't act. It happens from there. So when there is trauma, we lose, there might not be a threat, but we may feel that there is a threat. So that's what happens. We are continuously riding the sympathetic system. Everything may feel very threatening, unsafe. Yeah. So we might either go to the sympathetic or we may go to the parasympathetic. We freeze before we can even ride the sympathetic. So this is something to really be aware of. Yeah. And we as human beings, one of the gifts that we have is our ability to make meaning, our ability to create stories and narratives. But sometimes the earliest trauma that we experience, because the first 9 months of our life, our brain stems are developing. We do not have language and meaning making. And then I think the next 19 months or so, it is our limbic system that is getting, working, functioning. And then comes 3 years and after is when we even have access to our neocortex, story making or meaning making, even later, 5 years. And then the cortical brain, and all that system is fully active only at age 25. So till then we are still growing and learning and finding our ways. But when there is trauma, most of our trauma is in the first 5 years of our life. And when it is even earlier, we already, because it's our ability, our emotional brain gets completely compromised. So we might have aged, but our emotional maturity is very poor. We are not emotionally mature. Yeah. And the journey of becoming an adult is also that our emotions also mature. We have autonomy. we can mark our boundaries, we can hold our boundaries, our emotional boundaries, our intellectual boundaries, and not have to get triggered so much. Yeah. And in India, I mean, I'm sure it's true for rest of the world, because we have all inheritors of a trauma phase that the whole world is moved through the wars and the kind of conflict and migration and moving away from homes and all kinds of things. Especially if I talk about being an Indian, if I turn on the news or anything, even films, all I see is a sympathetic nervous system. Full on sympathetic nervous system is what I see. And you could see how those who are frozen and really cannot speak because of this predatory and the sympathetic nervous system that usually gets more room and is the predatory system, which is the attack system, and then if you step into yourself as the prey or the victim, then you are frozen. You cannot find. So some of these shows that I see on television, news shows, or even films, it's completely this wave of sympathetic or the parasympathetic, as in the freeze kind of, and that doesn't allow us to experience connection. When you're riding the sympathetic system, you have no access to your brain. You do not have access to the neocortical part of your brain, which is what is meaning making, which is what is about rational thinking, which is what is where our wisdom system is. It is what allows us to see, to feel the other, to connect with the other, because it's not available to us. So riding on the sympathetic system, there is no solutions that can be created in this world. And I feel many of the decision makers or the world leaders, they are riding the sympathetic system, or they are on the frozen system. So in both ways, emotionally disconnected. So when there is trauma, so trauma affects the autonomic nervous system. So it is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And our ability to experience our emotions in a mature way, such that we have autonomy over it, is compromised. That means when that is compromised, our ability to really feel the other person, that movement of I feel, you feel me, reciprocity, resonance, to see yourself being seen by the other. The very first experience we've had with a mother, to be fully seen and taken in. And in that process with the mother, we are here. We get seen, we become ourselves. And most of us have not had that experience. We later on, we are trying to seek that through all the other eyes that come in our life. Yeah. And so solution has to come from, as we, not just our bodies mature, but our emotional brain has to mature. And our emotional brain and our cognitive brain have to work together. Yeah. We need to have that emotional maturity. And this is when we can consciously be aware of our autonomic nervous system. And our window of tolerance. So this is another thing. We each have a window of tolerance, right? Within which we feel safe, we feel stable, we are able to connect, we are able to communicate, express ourselves fully. And when there is trauma, this window of tolerance is really squeezed in. You don't have that. Yeah. So to be able to see that in yourself and also to recognize in the other, and knowing that by judging them and being harsh with them, or tough love, this is such a ridiculous word, that's not going to shift for them. The only way someone feels safe is, how do you create safety? Within safety, someone's Windows tolerance has the option of even expanding. Yeah, and when they are able to feel safe and to be seen in who they are right now. Yeah, and what they're experiencing, what they are feeling or not able to feel. when we are able to hold space for that. That means we ourselves have to have our own journey of seeing our own window of tolerance and learning how to expand it. Yeah, learning how to consciously expand it, reclaim back our emotions, our ability to feel. Yeah, and when things are overwhelming, allowing that overwhelm to be released. Yeah, it's like the pressure cooker, the pressure has to be released. So knowing the valve, the pressure valve, your own pressure valve, and calling it quits, saying stop, pause, need to take a break. Yeah. So this ability, so it's like chicken and egg. When there is trauma, you cannot do it. Yeah. So, and without doing it, you cannot heal your trauma. So we need, so for trauma to heal, we have to do it together. Individually, you cannot do this work. It has to be in community, in dyads, in triads. We have to sit with each other and feel each other and find this journey. So some of us might have worked on ourselves and have greater window of tolerance. So we come, and we learn to speak those language and we hold space for those who do not have that. We need to have programs that support parents to access their own, to understand their own window of tolerance and where they lack it. And how can they recognize their own child, and how do you work with, so understanding this part is very important to understand developmental trauma. So this is, I hope this was useful, understanding these two systems and, being aware of holding your bladder, not peeing because you're so much excited, and so being aware of these things and saying, oh my God, no, I need to take a break. So we need to not be here. We need to find our somatic movements, allowing the body, be more in tune in the body, really start listening to body. Yeah, coming down, coming into this body, being very body aware. And like right now, I'm aware that I've spoken more. So I can already feel that my head is kind of, if I go on, I'm going to have a headache. I can feel my throat is getting dried up, but there is moisture too, but I can't go more. And I have to say, yeah, it's enough. It's enough. It's more than enough for my system. Yeah. So these are things that we have to start tuning into and saying, okay, yeah, that is something I did not know in my life, to say, okay, it's enough. And tell the other person that it's not you, but I'm done for now. We can come back to it later. I am done for now. And for that, we need to start tuning into our body. Most people around, they are not tuned into the body. So the body has to say no, and it starts acting up. Like my body right now there's a mosquito right here. My body is really now telling me, Rekha, no, pause, call it, stop. So yeah, I am calling pause, stopping, and yeah. So that was the autonomous nervous system. And homeostasis is being relaxed and also being aware. That is when you are in homeostasis and both the systems are moving together. Blessed be.